Recording in progress.
Shireen, where's the chair? It's 9:02 now.
Kungenzeka ukuthi nayo Sherin nakushuthi akekho.
Hayi ke sishaya ikhuke mthetho. Thina uhlele ukuditha.
Ngiyakuzwa ake sithi ukuthi kancane nangu ushenge ulalele manje
Ijeni yonke le, ijeni yonke le.
Nginilalele Nyambose, niyanibona niza amaphekula yikhuni.
Ijeni yonke le.
Yiko ngikhuza ngithi ake sithi kancane ushenge uzoyihamba yoyibika yonke lento.
Hayi ushenge uzonisamona nomkhaliphi.
Yiko phela ngizama ukucwecwa ukuthi hayi Mkhalipha asithi nje kuyibambi ilokhuzana amahashi ethu
Ejeni yuke wena mthetho kuJesu. Sayicabangela.
Cha ngiza neqhingasu ukuthi ushenge angayizwa yonke lento.
Hawu kodwa kwenze njani kusihlalo? Ake nimshayele eceleni bakithi.
No, Shireen must come here and tell us what is happening. Otherwise, we are going to share this meeting and run with this meeting. When the chair comes, we are going to take him out. Dikeledi.
Morning, members. Chairperson is trying to connect to the platform. He will be in shortly. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Ngisintshela ukuthi lento ayisebenzi. Itazinkani. Uyabona manje wa late.
Hayi Mkhaliphi. Vele phela leli phuzu eliqoqa namhlanje Mkhaliphi buloku ulikhuthazele mhlawumbe ungasalisho usibambele.
Mina ngithayilize la kuleli ekomiti. Nabo bazositshela bazosichazela njengoba ke uChe engaqalanga ngesikhathi bezositshela ukuthi asivote amafoni ke bathini abaqalela nabo omawethu.
Phela vele lolu hlelo nje lizotshontsha kakhulu ke le amafoni ngoba phela a-controller belungu. Akekho umuntu omnyama oney'ncingo lezi zokuxhumana manje futhi lelo voti selizotshontshwa bukhoma-ke manje. Futhi angithi uzwile wemkhaliphe bathi manje sekungeza nalaba abahambayo bathi South Africa kuzokulunga before 94 bathi bayabalanda manje inkantolo yabavumela babe nobuzwe obubili abeseLondon aphinde abe ngapha.
Ubonile ama-mass ID anikezwa abantu
Konke-ke
abanethola
ngama-smart bathi bazona laba bangaphandle manje sebengenziwa ukuthi babe abala ekhaya.
Hayi shame.
Kushuthi isikhaftini-ke leso ukuthi uma iy'balo zingahlangani bese sidibhale laba sibanikeze lama-ID. Umlungu lo ohlezi laphana uMcPherson owenza lokho.
Akuyena uMcPherson ilo munye usekhuluphele naye. Since eseyiminingi kunile.
Ubani? Kodwa ngiyazi lo ongafundanga.
Bonke abaya ngesikoleni nabo e-US.
Kodwa sebayasidelela babethi thina sifundile ngalezi akhani sebeletha bona-ke laba abangafundanga bonke. Shuthi le nto ayihambi ngakufunda le yithina manje sagqishwa iy'ncwadi.
Good morning, colleagues.
Morning, ma'am.
I just spoke to the chair now. He's trying to connect, but it seems like he has a network challenges. I think meanwhile we are waiting for him, we can start with the meeting and then he will join us. Or we can just give him 5 minutes. If he's not there, then we can continue with your meeting, with our meeting.
Sozwa ngawe-ke
Okay.
Sozwa ngawe thina JNU. Otherwise thina we're going to start a meeting.
We heard you. We heard you. Let's play it by ear.
Nizwa buthele
isingisi
lento ayisebenzi ukuhlangana la ku-computer. Let us go and convene physical. Anizwa.
No, there are those meetings that will need to go physical, but not all of the meetings that
But you
require
see
us
now
to
what is
go
happening.
physical.
Don't defend things when not direct.
We are
You see-
taking decision in parliament virtually.
We are seeing now. You see now. You are delayed. You have other things to attend to. We respect you for sake of respecting you. But don't tell us to understand something that we don't understand.
Lesotho Maupea.
Good morning, colleagues, honorable members. Good morning, the Minister, Deputy Ministers, and the members of the department, the chairperson and CEO of IEC. Good morning. My sincere apologies for this delay. May we start the meeting? I had some connection challenges, and so I really want to ask for an apology. At this point, I would like us
Morning,
to...
Chair, morning. Your apologies accepted. You wanted to take up through the coup.
Morning, Chair.
Morning.
Morning, Morning.
My chairperson, good morning, everybody else. Good morning.
Ngiyabingelela,
Good
Cwabe.
morning, everybody.
Bezitha, morning.
And Tireko defended you. You wanted a coup
No.
of the GNU.
No. My apologies, serious apologies. I've just had some connection
Accepted.
challenges. Yes.
Order, Mkhalifi.
May we start the meeting? Let's observe a moment of prayer and silent meditation. Yes. Thank you. We have the agenda in front of us. May I welcome the honorable members to the meeting. Let me welcome the department, the minister, deputy ministers, the directors generals, the IEC, the chairperson, and the members of the board, as well as the CEO and the entire management to this meeting. We are today coming to get a briefing from the IEC, and so that's the agenda we have, and we will focus all our time on this very important matter. May we then get the members to adopt, to move for adoption of the agenda?
I move, Chair.
Thank you, Tireko. Thank you very much. Seconder?
I second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Shenge. Thank you very much. Then we proceed with the meeting, as it were. A few weeks ago, the IEC had conducted a very interesting conference or workshop on the issue of electronic voting system. The had wished that we should be briefed on this matter going forward. So at this point, we would like to then welcome the briefing as it's coming through. I assume that we all are ready for this discussion. I do have an apology for early departure from Inkosi Buthelezi. I'm not sure if there are any others, but if there are, please, Shirin, let's bring them for my attention so that the meeting can note them. And so we then proceed at this point. May we then welcome the leadership of the IEC. It would be nice to get the whole team showing themselves up. I see we've got the CEO with us, and please, Mr. Msutu Muyepia, Mr. Mamabulo, I can see Honorable Janet Love and the other members. Please, can we hand over to the IEC to take us through introduction, and then we can move on to the team. But as you introduce it, would be nice to see the faces of the people. Thank you. You are a bit muted. If you might want to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. I am grateful, and we are happy to be here on your invitation. To you and the members, I heard you say that the minister is here. To the minister, the deputy ministers, good morning to you all. My name is Msutu Muepia. I'm chairperson of the Electoral Commission. With me is Commissioner Love. She showed her face earlier. She's showing it again. Good. Members of the commission, other members of the commission are engaged elsewhere on assignment, but we will represent them well. We are joined by the Chief Electoral Officer and his team, including Mr. Masejo Shiburi, Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Electoral Operations, Mr. Mawetu Mosri, Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Outreach, Don Bata, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. George Mahlangu, Chief Executive for Political Funding. That's us at the moment. We will be able to cover the subject with this team present here. But as I set out, let me thank you, Chairperson, for your coming and staying with us the course when we were in Cape Town at that conference, where we were looking at the work we have done, looking at what others are doing in the electronic voting space, and how far the developments have gone, and what we as a nation may or may not be able to do. We are in that process as we speak, and that's the work that we will share with you. We will share with you the research that has been undertaken. We will share with you some of the challenges we believe we face, but some of the advantages or opportunities there might be in considering electronic voting, and what we believe it would take to either confirm or not confirm whether this is desirable for us as a nation to undertake. I do so without wasting time to then invite the Chief Electoral Officer to take us through the presentation, or his nominee to do so for us. Through you, Chairperson of the session, may I invite Saima Mabolo to then deal with the matter. We will take questions where the questions arise, and we'll deal with the issues you and the members might want to raise. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson, and greetings to members of the Portfolio Committee. I just want to add Ms. Ekcher Henning, who is also part of our delegation from the administration of the Commission. I take it then, Chair, that the presentation is visible.
Yes, it's visible. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. What we really wish to indicate by way of introduction is the fact that there's been very fundamental changes in the country over the last 3 decades. And on the political front, as well as relating to the social milieu of the country. And some of the key characteristics of that change relates to our transition, which is beginning to mature, and the constitutional entrenchment of multi-party democracy. And that we are observing in the political terrain the fact that contestation for public office is increasing and getting more complex. And that is occasioned by the number of political parties that are contesting, as well as the number of candidates who are offering themselves for election to public office. We are also seeing electoral reform related to the introduction of independent candidates, amongst other things. But the fact that the parliament itself has decided to provide for the creation of an electoral reform consultation panel to consider a revised electoral system for the country. And these things have a compounding effect on the diversity as well as the demands on ballot paper design and its associated costs. The point we're making here is the number of contestants are increasing, and therefore ballot paper design is impacted. But as ballot paper design is impacted, so does the costs, because to accommodate an increase in number of contestants, you're going to have to increase the size. And with the increase in the size of ballots, there's a limitation in terms of the printing press. There's so much that the South African printing industry can accommodate by way of increased ballot sizes. So that's the point we're making. Now, as we have seen in last year's elections, ballot papers have become lengthier, and cognitively that demands more from the voter to correctly identify and make their mark for the choice, for the party of their choice. To make a choice from amongst 10 parties and to make a choice from amongst 58 parties, it's different. Cognitively, it demands more to deal with a longer ballot than it does a smaller ballot. Now, given the growing role and impact of digital technology in elections globally, we've taken measures to ensure excellence and robust systems in electoral administration. And within that broad package of measures that we are taking to have this robust system, one of the considerations is the possible introduction of electronic voting. So we don't see this as an isolated measure, but as a package of interventions using technology to make electoral administration better. But it is important at this stage to mention that there is no decision to implement electronic voting. Precisely because that decision, we consider it to be a national policy matter, which is within the purview of Parliament as a national policy making institution of the country. So we've not taken that decision, neither are we empowered, we believe, to make that decision. But of course, that does not mean a national conversation should not be held. We need to have this national conversation, hear what the general populace is saying, so that we can then empower Parliament at an appropriate moment to engage the matter and to take a decision on an informed basis. This is really the primary purpose of this exercise, to define what these electronic voting systems are, what are the different types of electronic voting systems, and hear the public views on those, and once that is done, put that all together, package that all together, present it before Parliament for a national policy decision to be made. Now, the Commission tasked the Human Sciences Research Council to do research on the considerations necessary for a decision on implementing e-voting. And the result of that project is the development of a discussion document, which was unveiled at the conference, which the chairperson referenced earlier. But the exploration of e-voting also aligns with our strategic objective of ensuring that we remain a preeminent election management body that seeks continuous improvement and innovation through technology. So that aligns with our strategic focus to use technology to solve electoral problems. Now, there's about 20 to 22 million people in South Africa who use smartphones with mobile connections estimated to exceed 90 million by 2023. That's according to the study by Taylor.
Sorry,
Now,
Chair.
Excuse
Sorry,
me,
Chair.
Mr. Mamabolo, excuse me. We thought you were doing introductory comments,
Yes,
but
Chair.
your slide is not moving.
Oh, yes. I was trying to raise that, Chair.
Oh, okay, sorry, Honorable Nkosi.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
Just
stuck.
still on slide 1, but if you are not moving yet, it's okay, but we just wanted to be sure that it's not a technical glitch.
it does appear to be a technical glitch, Chair, because I was already at slide 5. So what I'll do, I'll take off the thing and reload it. Perhaps that will resolve the issue. Can we now see slide number 5?
Yes, we do see slide number 5, Kolo.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm sorry about that glitch. So Census 2022 also revealed that 79% of the country has some form of internet connectivity.
Yes.
And according to the International Telecommunications Union, the proportions of individuals in South Africa using internet via either fixed or mobile networks rose from 5% in 2000 to 24% in 2010 and 75% in 2022. So you can see that there's a exponential increase in the use of internet, either via a fixed connection or mobile connection. And that the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the adoption of online systems, such as e-learning, e-commerce, and increased more people to electronic platforms since about the time in 2020 when COVID started. That's according to the World Economic Forum. I'm on slide 6. I hope that we are now all together.
It
Not
seems
yet.
we are not.
We are not.
No.
Bese uthi asivote electronically ke CEO. Ama-slides engamove.
Can we see slide 6? Can we see slide 6?
Yes, we can now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then the issue really is that we have been watching this area. It has been within our side. Because
Opsi,
because
we've gone back to the opening slide.
Come again?
We've gone back to the opening slide through you, Chair.
Maybe can the administrator of the committee drive the presentation? Perhaps if we do that, if through you, Chair, take that option, it would work better. And then go to slide 6.
Chair is trying to say something, but I think the network is failing him.
No,
Slide
it's
6.
part of the evaluation of the same proposal of e-voting. We will recommend when they are finished.
Go to slide 6. Yes. So the point that we're making is that this matter has been within our side for a long time. In 2013 already, we had commissioned a desktop study which looked at the subject. So the discussion document that we have is not the first installment, or rather the first consideration of the matter. The matter has always been within our purview. But we also recognize the demand for modernization and the fact that efficiency in electoral processes has permeated our findings over the past decades. And we also note that the IEC has already implemented a range of innovative ICT tools to make voting more accessible to voters. And let's go to the next slide. For instance, in our voter portal platform, we provide voters with the following opportunities. From the portal, you can register to vote. You can view and verify your address. You can view your voter registration information. You can view information relating to upcoming elections. And you can use the portal to request a special vote. These things happen online. These are services that the IEC provides online. Furthermore, voters can also connect with the IEC via social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. So now, if we get into the e-voting systems themselves, there are two broad categories of e-voting systems. One is internet or online voting, what is generally referred to as i-voting. The system involves voting that takes place outside of the designated voting station, where voter casts a vote using a computer or a smartphone with appropriate login credentials and authentication. And then the second category of electronic voting systems happens within the voting station environment. A voter here now go back, stay there, yeah. A voter there presents themselves physically at the voting station, where an e-voting machine is used to verify them, to authenticate them, and then enable that voter to cast a ballot using technology. So those are the two broad categories of e-voting systems. Yeah, we can move. Now, in relation to voting station-based technologies, these are some of the different types. So within that second category, there are different types of machines that may be considered. The first is the EVM, electronic voting machine. The second is the direct recording equipment. Third is precinct count optical scans. And there's the voter verifiable paper audit trail and the ballot marking devices. So we'll look at each one of this. Next slide. Yes, no. Okay. Yeah, maybe just keep it there for a while because my version is has a little more than what you have. Just keep it there for a while. The EVM or electronic voting machine was designed in India with features such as multilingual support, off-grid connectivity. It comprises a ballot unit for the voter and a control unit for the presiding officer. In other words, the presiding officer opens for the voter to vote, and after they voted, they close and allow the next person to come through. So essentially, that's how the EVM machine works. It allows for multilingual support. In other words, you can use different languages according to the voters' proficiency in a language. The second type of system, the direct recording equipment, DRE. These are primarily used in the USA, and they have the following features. They have buttons, a mouse, a digital pen, or a numeric code. These types also have a touch screen or a smart screen interface, and they record votes directly into the computer's memory. These types of electronic voting machines, they can also be accompanied with the voter verifiable audit trail printers so that the vote of the printer can be verified by that voter on a piece of paper. And there's a printer to print those options. And then the third option is the precinct count optical scan. And the precinct count optical scan is a system that allows voters to mark their ballots physically. In other words, you mark a physical ballot as we know it. Then the paper ballots are scanned at the polling place or a central location. The scanner then creates an electronic image of each ballot and interprets it and computes the tally for each party or contestant. So this one works in conjunction with a ballot paper that the voter marks. Then the fourth type is the ballot marking devices. This allows for the electronic presentation of a ballot and an electronic selection of candidate option. In other words, the candidates, parties, and they'll be represented electronically on the screen. And after voting, there'll be the production of a human readable ballot paper. In other words, there's a screen with all parties. The voter is given the option. They mark their choice, and then there's a production of a human readable ballot paper. So the machine produces a marked ballot paper in relation to the choice of that voter. And then the last point really are the voter verifiable audit trail. This essentially can work with any system. It's an additional type of accompaniment. It basically says, when a voter has marked, has made their choice on the machine produces a voter verifiable paper with the choice that that voter made, so that they can confirm that what they inputted on the screen is the same as what is recorded in the memory of the machine. So it produces what we call a voter verifiable paper audit trail. And as I say, this can work in conjunction with almost all the options that I've just outlined. Now, what would be the objectives of an electronic voting system? Firstly, is to increase access to the vote, particularly for disadvantaged and marginalized social groups, because e-voting holds the potential to address issues such as language, visual and physical barriers, and to enhance greater electoral access and participation. But secondly, e-voting holds the potential for electoral efficiency, to reduce the time required to count and process the votes. Given that traditional paper-based ballots are labor-intensive and prone to human error. So electronic voting systems are credited with delivering faster and more accurate results. Thirdly, next slide. They potentially, electronic voting systems may boost voter turnout and youth participation. We're not saying it will happen as a matter of course, but may boost voter turnout and youth participation. Because as we know, young persons engage in social, political, and economic discussions rarely on online platforms. So the introduction of e-voting could help with youth participation because of their comfort and familiarity with technology. Yeah, let's go with slide 15, the benefits. What would be the benefits? Were the country to decide to adopt e-voting, what would be the benefits? Firstly, e-voting systems have the potential to modernize the voting process and make it more accessible, a point we've made. E-voting can provide fast, seamless ballot tabulation, in other words, ballot counting, leading to quicker election results. It could reduce the number of unintentionally spoiled ballot papers due to the clarity of the electronic interface. And as we indicated, it could mitigate low voter turnout. And it could potentially increase voter participation. Now, in the medium to long term, e-voting could be regarded as economically viable, requiring fewer resources than the paper-based systems. And of course, we've got to clarify that point to say that a detailed financial modeling of e-voting is required because the country has to know upfront what the costs of e-voting are going to be. And whether, in fact, as that proposition goes, e-voting systems will be cheaper over time in comparison with the current modality of voting. So a detailed financial modeling of e-voting still has to happen as part of the ongoing discussion on the matter. And e-voting machines can be configured for various electronic interfaces, addressing challenges like illiteracy and visual impairments. Yeah, let's move. Now, what would be the key considerations? Because you don't just will it and it happens. There's got to be a purposeful program that goes with the policy document. In other words, should the policy be adopted by Parliament, then what are the tasks that then follow that adoption? Firstly, will be the legislative review, because you need a solid legal foundation to define and support e-voting and ensure that whatever legal framework that is designed to support the e-voting reality has constitutional compliance. Secondly, and importantly, the issue of a comprehensive campaign for public education about e-voting benefit, challenges, and the mitigation strategy, as well as being alive to the fact that we need to be inclusive, because South Africa continues to be beset by issues of a digital divide. There are still many South Africans who are not part of the digital economy. So one has to be alive to that in structuring the public education campaign. Thirdly, infrastructure development. There's a need for adequate technological infrastructure for e-voting system. Therefore, there'll be a requirement for collaboration with power and telecommunication companies to ensure that there's sufficient basic telecommunication and energy infrastructure to support e-voting equally across the country. Fourthly is the issue of training programs. Clearly, when you introduce a new phenomenon such as this, is a big change management process that is required to ensure that the people who will be operating e-voting machines are appropriately trained, and they can do basic, they have basic understanding of the functional proficiency of that equipment. So training at all levels of the IEC is going to be crucial. But another crucial point is pilot projects. I think as a country, should we adopt this? As a country, we can't just have one full soup introduction. You've got to, over time, do pilot projects in certain areas, hopefully of a varied social milieu. One in an urban town, in a rural village, in a informal settlement, in a formal settlement, so that you can derive from those pilots insights that you have to take into account in the eventual rollout. So piloting at specific sites becomes important. And then lastly, on key considerations, is the dual system option where perhaps a person elects either to go to a station or to use internet voting, i-voting. It's one of the considerations that could be made. It's an option available, but it's an option that obviously has got to be analyzed properly, and the challenges and the benefits of having a dual system have to be understood well and mitigated sufficiently, especially as it relates to the issue of cybersecurity, because being on the internet, you are subject to the vagaries of being on the internet, and those must be mitigated if a dual system is agreed in the policy discussion. And then if we map e-voting globally, it's not a, you know, there are countries that have used e-voting successfully, others not so successfully. And it's important that as we discuss this matter in the country, we also are informed by the realities of e-voting in other jurisdictions. India used electronic voting machines since 2002. Now, India has the biggest election in the world because of the numbers involved there. So since 2002, they've been using the EVM machines. Brazil used an e-voting system in the elections since 2000. And again, both India and Brazil, one of the common characteristics in those countries are the number of voters. They both have high levels of members of the public who are voting. In the Philippines, and the Philippines is having an election in either soon, they conducted regional pilots. So the idea of pilots, they comes in 2008 using precinct count optical scan. This is where you use a physical ballot, mark the physical ballot, and take it through the machine. And it creates an image of that ballot and interprets it to create a tally for that. So they've been implementing that countrywide since 2010. Venezuela, again, it will be having an election soon, a sub-national election, I believe, introduced direct recording electronic GRE since 2004. And then Bhutan has used the same machines as India, the EVM, since 2008. Nepal, since 2004. And then another idea comes from Fiji that tested their machines in their trade union, industrial, and student election before adopting them for use broadly in their elections. Estonia employs a sophisticated e-government system since the 90s, and it started i-voting in 2005. But you can see that in Estonia, the i-voting is a component of a broader e-government system where services are already received or accessed using the internet. So there's a well-implemented government-wide system where citizens receive or access public services. Now, there are countries that employ a combination of internet voting and electronic voting machines, such as the US. Now, it is important that we also indicate the following, that there are countries that have stopped electronic voting for a number of varied reasons. One is Namibia, on page, on slide, on the next slide, yeah. Namibia was the first country on the continent of Africa to use electronic voting machines, the ones similar to those in India. And these were used in 4 local elections, as well as in 1 parliamentary and presidential elections in 2014. However, in 2017, the Namibian Constitutional Court revoked the use of EVMs until the voter verifiable paper audit trail was introduced. So the Constitutional Court took issue with the fact that the EVMs as they had them were without the voter verifiable paper audit trail, which the court felt was very important for confidence building in the system, because the voter verifiable paper audit trail ensures that the voter sees how the machine has recorded their vote. So that's quite an important lesson, I think, for us as well. And then the DRC, second country on the continent, implemented e-voting in 2018 because of their extremely long ballot papers for presidential, national, and provincial elections. Now, the problems in the DRC and their ballot paper is that every person who is on the list, on the PR list, has to appear on the ballot. So essentially, in the DRC, they have a ballot book, because if you've got 58 parties and each party has 200 candidates, all the 200 candidates for the 58 parties must be on that ballot. So we're talking a book, a ballot book. So to remediate that, they bought electronic voting machine. But what did not happen in the DRC is that the legal framework was not amended to take account of the EVM. So another important lesson there is an issue that we mentioned, that if the policy is adopted and a choice made, then you have to revise the legal framework to attune with that choice that has been made. You can't have a situation where the commission is implementing e-voting, but it's not supported by an appropriate legal framework. Ireland introduced e-voting in 2005 as a result of opposition by parties and the public on the use of technology. The country abandoned its planned usage of e-voting in 2009. Germany conducted e-voting trials between 1998 and 2005, with nearly 2 million people participating. But despite this, e-voting was declared unconstitutional in 2009. And the issue there was the certification of the machines, whether the machines were recording things as expressed by the voter. And there wasn't a certification process to say this machine does exactly what it ought to do, and an independent, if you like, certificate issued for that purpose. Peru piloted e-voting in 2011, but since then, Congress, the equivalent of Parliament, has not allocated any significant funding for it. Then the Netherlands legalized the use of e-voting in 1996 and in 1999, and in 2004, concerns regarding reliability of the machines emerged. And therefore, in 2008, it suspended e-voting project and discontinued the use of e-voting. Norway piloted internet voting, but discontinued in 2014 due to concerns about voter cohesion and the potential for votes to become public. So there are issues about certification, there are issues about voter verifiable paper audit trail. There are also issues about voter cohesion. And lastly, there are issues about the secrecy of the vote. So the view of the Commission is that we need a national conversation, and that national conversation has been set for 6 months really, and the Commission will be conducting public engagements, stakeholder engagements in the provinces on the subject, and then take the lessons and insights from those submissions into the discussion document, and then through the appropriate channels submit those to Parliament. We have a web page which is on our website, as well as a dedicated email address for the public feedback and submissions. So as I say, then the chairperson of the meeting and chairperson of the Commission, the public inputs will be used to revise the current draft policy document, and then a final proposed policy document will be submitted to the relevant policymakers, including Parliament, for a decision on the subject. Thank you very much for your audience. I think thank you very much for your audience, and I hand back over to the chairperson of the Commission, who can roll before he hands over to the chairperson of the committee.
Chair of the session, I don't want to delay. I see hands are up. That was the presentation. We will have discussions as members would want us to have. We'll answer questions members may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Commission and the members of the Commission present. Thanks to the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Mamabulo, for the presentation. Don't worry about the hands, Mr. Mwepe. These hands were up long before the presentation was requested. So there's a lot of interest in the committee. So the hands are going to be up for quite a while. But let me say to the honorable members, I attended the conference together with Honorable Kalipi. It was a very interesting conference, and I must say the Chief Electoral Officer has done a good job trying to give us a flavor of what was in the discussion. The last part, excuse me, that Mr. Mamabolo referred to is the area of direct research that's been done. I have actually supplied the honorable members on our chat group the details of this. So if you download it, it will actually take you through, in particular, the last bit of it, which is where people have countries that have abandoned the electronic voting system. It's there. I've indicated it's page 46 to 50. Very interesting, but there's a whole lot of analysis on a country-to-country basis in terms of how they compare with South Africa and what South Africa would need to do to deal with this issue. The nature of the conversation is such that all of us would make our input, but I think it is very clear that there's no decision made yet, but it's a very welcome intervention to bring this conversation to the table, because the conversation has to precede any policy decision, particularly because firstly, the concept, we need to get over the stage fright on this matter. And secondly, we need to then also look at the number of features that have to be considered as a matter of choice as we create our own South African menu on this matter. So we're very far from that, but it's time to discuss. So I have all the hands now noted. Honorable Mtetwa first, and then Honorable Van Zyl, Honorable Mkhaliphi, Honorable Buthelezi, Honorable Direko. We will have the conversation going. We've got time for it. So let's allow the members to express their view. Honorable Mtetwa, you are first on the list. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity to actually present here, and greetings to the honorable members and greetings to also our visitors, the IEC delegation. I would be happy if this presentation was actually introduced first year, because I also remember I did attend one day of this session. So then I was thinking, who commissioned this? Is it IEC or it is somebody outside the country proposing that we do these things, more so that it is now coming to us as the portfolio committee and is presented? Reason being, you have done a desktop research on the reforms of the electoral system. I would have loved you to also bring us a historical reflection of the 30 years of voting, which we've had since 94. You juxtapose that with the quality of lives of the people being changed by the electoral process, because I would like to see if the elections as an activity, is it linked directly to governance? If there is no link between the two, so that we would be quick to say we don't need this thing because it's not linked to the outcomes of governance and probably good governance. I'm asking this question. We had exactly a technical glitch last year in the elections, a huge one, where we were blank with the screens for a very long time. And IEC has not taken us into their confidence on exactly what happened. Now, doing a research. And I'm asking this question directly because now you're talking e-voting. Could it be that we had a technical glitch that was exposing our poor technology, so that we then know that as you introduce this subject, have you taken stock of what has just happened last year? Because we even have a legal case that is sitting in court, having not resolved an issue of a technical glitch that had far-reaching consequences on our elections last year. And I'm also checking, did you do a research that will come from the bottom up, meaning coming from the people who are voting, are they the ones that are recommending the country's economy, referencing these reforms from? Those are established countries. Those countries, their economies are well structured. There is infrastructure. But you're coming to compare South Africa, 2% are black, and those are outside the economy. So which means when you talk about election reforms and you then juxtapose it with established countries, the outcome of that is going to be something else because we are still struggling with infrastructure. My question is, what are you proving or what are you solving? And whose problem are you solving? Because we are sitting at different domains where the poor are not going to tell you that I'm interested to anything about voting, but they may be interested to vote. But when you reform voting to a level of technology, that technology, it is your baby. You will have to furnish that technology to all of us. And if we don't have these technologies, then you have a problem whereby you don't make it our problem. Voting, as far as I'm concerned, is a domestic matter. So if it is a domestic matter first, then we should be looking inwardly first. What are the issues that are affecting our people? More than what are the interests of other international communities on what we are doing? Because our situation is not changing because of challenges that arise in the economy of our own country. I'm asking another question. Have you considered a system whereby you put up drums or portals where those people who want to vote for that particular party, they just go to a drum of MK and load their votes there, and their vote be counted separately? You don't take votes of MK, mix it with ANC, NDA, and then the outcome, you tell us that one of us has won more than us. Yet you pulled our votes, and now we cannot trace whether there is any foul play in that process. Another reform that I'm thinking you should be considering, why don't you have a screen as I vote, wherever that I'm voting, the numbers are tallying same time, so that you don't have to sit down and say, now you are counting. And then you even have additions of things that were not part of the voting process, because we cannot prove that when you say we are pulling everything together. So we need to say, no, as I vote, it is already registered. The numbers the last time I voted were at this. Another question, why do you allow us to vote in public where everybody is seeing that I'm voting? But when you are counting, you go behind a curtain and you call certain few guys to say they're the one who are observing election, they're observing the counting, even if, yes, we are represented, but why, as the process goes to the outcome of voting, it becomes more secrecy than it was public when we were actually going to the voting? Looking into the cybersecurity issues, us being so backward in terms of ICT as a country, can you imagine our system being hacked as we vote by somebody sitting somewhere in the world and interfering with a serious process wherein we want to elect our leadership? Then we have another case of a cyber hacking that we now have to deal with. What happens to the election process? Another question. As you introduce these reforms, you are interfering with the legalities or legislative processes wherein we must legislate that now we are using an e-voting system and we're migrating from the manual voting system. So which means we must sit down and make laws and approve those laws, go to all quality checks legally, judicially, to say they are in check. All that hassle that we must go through just because there are reforms that must be introduced. In fact, I'm interested to know who has more interest in this reform. Is it the 62 million people of South Africa? Another question that I have, I saw a judgment that allows those who left South Africa 494 that now they can't be allowed to have dual citizenship. While I'm staying in London, I can't be a citizen of South Africa. So we'll have people who are staying in other countries but voting here. Whatever the reasons you can justify them, that already is an interference. And we are seeing that as a threat whereby people or countries that have an issue with us can stage elections and stage people who can say, I am also one of those who left South Africa. By the way, those people left on their own accord thinking that South Africa will not make it after a black man is elected as a president. It turns out 30 years later that a country is running, then they are coming back. They say, now we have an interest in this country. What interest do they have? Because the situation of the country is still appalling in terms of the condition, unless there are other interests that they have other than just being citizens. But how are you going to deal with this dual citizenship now? Another question that I have. I see the Minister of Home Affairs is now digitizing IDs and is allowing those who are naturalized in South Africa to now form part of people who will have IDs. And then, which means those people will be forming part of our elections process. And that is now already introducing an upswing in terms of numbers and population, which is not necessarily organically a population that was generated by people who were organically South African. So you now have a supplementary citizens, which all of that is coming to interfere in the conditions of our people. And that is also an issue that we need to pay attention to. I don't see you focusing more on countries in the African continent where we share even similar economic conditions. You are comparing an ideal that doesn't exist here, which also we cannot trace it, that once we have this e-voting process, we shall have better conditions, because there's still a question whether after voting, are our conditions becoming better? If not, which means voting is another process, governance is another process. These two don't marry, yet we are so bogged down in improving e-voting processes in our country as if it's going to lead to a better life. Better life has not. My last submission is this one. From 94 till 2025, the conditions of black people have deteriorated, but the conditions of white people have improved. More money has been made by white people who are a minority, and the majority have not made money, which means they are outside economic circulation, this 92%. This is telling you scientifically that for 30 years, the conditions of those whom democracy was intended for in terms of majority have not benefited in 30 years. Here we are coming with reforms that have no direct benefit to the majority's life being improved. So please take us through your confidence. What exactly are you trying to solve, and what is broken once we're still struggling to fix the administrative process of the elections in South Africa in 30 years, where you still have issues of voting process having not started on time, where you still have issues of electricity, where you still have issues of telecommunications, where you still have issues of poverty, where you still have issues of voter non-response, where people are actually boycotting elections, and now you're introducing e-voting. Are you not trying to supplement that those people who didn't come to vote, at least electronically, can boost them up? Also, you know the corruption that happens
I think
through
we should round up,
electronic.
Honorable Peter.
Okay.
Let's round up.
You know the corruption that is introduced by electronics. People can send you a bank statement and interfere with that bank statement under pretense that there is money there, only to find later there is no money. This process is also exposed in the similar manner as we have problems with the banking system. So my questions to you are, I'm not part of this, and I don't support it based on merit and academic references and research, because your research is from elsewhere, it's not from the conditions where I'm living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the one reason why I wanted you to have a sight of the research is you will see that there is comparison with other countries. DRC is no way different. Namibia and some of the countries that are indicated, there are some which are within the continent. So you'll have a look at that. If you download it, you'll see a lot of that. The problem may not be enough time to deal with it. I'll leave the rest of the questions for the team to deal with, although I do realize that some of them are more political debate than need for any clarification at the level of a technical team, such as what the IEC is looking at. So let's proceed to the next member, Honorable Van Zyl.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to all the colleagues online, as well as the presentations by the IEC and the IEC that is present. Unfortunately, I did not see the full report prior to what the Chairperson had shared with us. So my focus will be on what was presented to us today and not conflating it with other issues. I wanted just to find out what are the estimated short-term versus long-term cost implications of e-voting compared to the current paper-based system that is in place. Then I wanted to find out also about the cybersecurity and how we would ensure that the biometric systems used at poll site voting stations are secure, tamper-proof, and protect voter privacy. I know there was made some mention that we need drums. I would definitely oppose that because your vote is your secret. So I wanted to find out how would you actually tamper-proof this system with regards to ICT. And then I wanted to find out the confidence of the IEC, especially in our rural areas. I mean, I have voting stations deep in Sterkspruit, for instance, in my constituency that don't have any signal. And we all know that the VMDs has in the past created a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, and a lot of people being turned away from voting stations because they have to wait because it's offline, even though they should be able to work offline. So what is the IEC's confidence that an e-voting system, even if it is at the polls itself, would be successful given the nature and the topography of our ICT across South Africa? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. It's me. Next.
Continue, Honorable Mkhaliphi.
Oh, thank you, Whip. Thanks very much. Thanks for the presentation. We welcome the presentation. Maybe one must start with the recommendations from the committee. From the department. Sorry, I used to engage with the committee a lot. I want a specific clarification to check, because as I was listening to the presentation by the CEO, we are busy consulting with different stakeholders. And I think it's very important because we still have it on some of the issues. I think we can also take that opportunity to engage you at that level. So therefore, I want to understand if a political party wants to come and invite you to come and do the presentation and engage with the political party, are you amendable to that? That is one. Secondly, as we are busy consulting with stakeholders, if you can also share where are you advertising or inviting those stakeholders, if one group or NPO, NGO, or whoever wants to be part and parcel of the consultation, where one can get that information. But for me, I want to understand if we can invite you as EFF caucus in Parliament or political party in HQ to say, please come and engage with us in order for us to understand you. But having said that, I still have some few questions. And the chair is saying that we must check from page 46 to page 50, whereby this e-voting is no longer being used by those countries, and it comes from your own presentation. So therefore, I want to understand, because this e-voting has been introduced or tried in other countries, as you alluded to the presentation on the document that called in exploring the implementation of electronic voting in South Africa is a policy discussion document of the IEC. So maybe the specific question, CEO, why would you want to explore something that has failed? What do you want to hope to achieve differently from those countries such as Namibia? And I'm very happy because it's one of the African countries we have tried and said, no, it's not working for us from various reasons. And Ireland, Germany, and Peru, and DRC, I think they're still using it. So that is the question, because some of the issues or some of the reason why they are no longer using this e-voting, it's around the issue of devices. As we speak now, as South Africans, we have the issue of devices ourselves. The currently VMD that is used by the IEC is always giving us problems. And it also causes a lot of stresses and infighting. Being the latest development is in Ward 110 eThekwini, whereby the IEC official took the VMD and go and charge it at his house or her house, and it caused a lot of infighting. So one, we have that problem as we speak. Secondly, we have a problem of load shedding. We have a problem of network. We have experienced this morning when the chair, even now, this session is not chaired by the chair because of the network. So if we are saying that as a country, we are ready for e-voting.
Honorable Mkhaliphi, don't worry.
Sobuyile, chair, musungidisturb, ubungekho ngesikhathi ngikhuluma kuze kwathi uDerek wathi angiqhubeke. So if you want to introduce this e-voting while we have these challenges as a country in terms of electricity, load shedding, network problem, how are we going, or how IEC is envisaging to solve this problem? And the last one is the issue of the one that Honorable Mteto was raising, the issue of now we are seeing the Minister of Home Affairs very happy, excited, going to Home Affairs offices, saying that so much numbers, people who have been naturalized, they are going to receive the smart IDs. So therefore, it means these people are going to be able to vote. And how are we going to distinguish now between the people who are supposed to vote and the people who have naturalized? Is the capacity of the IC going to able to deal with those things? And then in Germany, but they declared the system unconstitutional. We know with our case here in South Africa, whereby we also face the similar situation as the IEC and the country. And I still think that we have not addressed what the Constitution have identified. As a result, it declared this that case unconstitutional. So therefore, I think when we were there in the IEC, when you called us in Western Cape, and the chair correctly said the chair of the committee was there the whole out. I think the chair asked a very pertinent question. I think now we also have to get some clarity in that regard to say, what are you trying to fix? Correctly, so we are saying that there's the statistics of South Africa is saying that more than 79% of South Africans have access to smartphone. But we know very well it is 79%, is not 100% of the population. As Honorable Fanzeli was saying that in her hometown, there's no network. People in rural areas, they don't have smartphone, and they are going to be affected very well. So how are you envisaged to achieve what you want to achieve when we still have the challenges of people who does not have access to smartphone? And also, let's say I have a smartphone, I have an access to smartphone now here, but it does not mean that I know how to use that smartphone. Maybe I'm just glad to have a smartphone in my hand and I'm having a latest phone, but it does not mean that now I'm equipped as you are trying to paint that picture. So you are saying that on a positive side, it must be acknowledged that e-voting could provide fast, seamless ballot tabulation and fewer unintentional spoiled ballots. It's not about only ballot. As much as I agree with you, is getting complex in terms of the ballot, but it's not about ballot. It's about some other challenges that we face during elections. Firstly, people does not appear on the voters' roll. Others, they've been moved, and so on and so on and so on. So exactly what do you want to fix about this? Is we are not happy, as right as we speak, as South Africans, about the voting. But now, if you want to introduce this new system that is also going to have their own challenges, as IEC, what is the end result? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhaliphi. Can we have Honorable Telezi?
Thank you, Chair. Siyathokoza Gcwabe. And I would like to start by thanking, of course, the presentation. Very insightful in terms of what the IEC is trying to convey to us and the country. I think that from my point of view, Chair, I'm saying that I think that when you look at the challenges that we are having now in terms of where we are, I just think, although it's always, of course, very important to always look ahead to what is possible, I think I can't fault the fact that the IEC has decided to start on this initiative, but then we must explore and look deeper and deep dive into it. Now, when I look at the challenges, one looks at the challenges that we have right now, I think that it would be safe to say that, and we've been guilty of this from time to time as South Africans, rushing ahead of ourselves and punching above our weight. Because, I mean, of course, you get away with this punching above your weight, but not always. I think that, for instance, if you look right now at the challenges in terms of technology, right now, I mean, and you look even away from elections, you just look at the banking. I mean, and there are two areas where you would see which become barriers. In terms of maybe the IEC, to make an example, last day it was a glitch on their part, or on the part of whoever the service provider is. But the second one is where people are not quite actually are far from where they should be in terms of enjoying the benefits themselves, communities, and as a country. Because there are people right now, I mean, who just cannot, who know, for instance, that the phone is only for making calls and receiving calls, nothing more. And some of them will be surprised, very educated, but let's talk about those who have no option, no matter how much they try. So there is still a very huge chunk, Chair, of people who are actually sitting there. Now you say to yourself then, what is the risk of these people all being shut out when we move to this level? The other question where I would like the clarity on as well is that would the IEC maybe give assurance that this would be looking at other countries as well, but talking about South Africa, this would be 100% seepage free in terms of fraud. I don't know what is the margin for error in terms of fraud, number one, and especially that you find so many people who are not South Africans who have actually legal papers, in inverted commas, legal papers which are not legal. I mean, that's a challenge for in other areas as well, not only it would be for here. And secondly, so many times the old people and people who are illiterate, they are also, you will find someone to help them, like at the ATM. What is the element? I mean, to what extent will, if you get someone, I mean, I find it's a serious risk if I ask someone to help me with voting, because you end up not knowing what they've put there. And in South Africa, unfortunately, it's a very, very big chunk of those people. Then also, I think in looking at these countries, of course, it's very, very important that when we are looking at it as the IEC, you look what has happened in the past. You know, in order for us to look forward, we must know what's happened in the past. But I think we must be careful, guard against benchmarking ourselves against countries which are, as we see right now, are far ahead of us. If you look at India, India is not just us. I mean, many countries in the world, they are, I mean, light years ahead of them. Maybe it becomes much more easier if you look to countries nearer home, like I think Honorable Mkhaliphi touched on Namibia and countries like that. But then I move also to a question which other colleagues have asked: is there an urgency to move to this point? Because there are people who feel very, very strongly that even where we sit right now, there has never been free and fair elections. Well, you can talk about the margin of error, of course, will always be there in anything you do. Then you say if the margin of error is this percentage, then it's considered that is free and fair. So my concern really is that one is, or what I would say about this right now, is just that it's a great idea whose time hasn't come for South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Recording stopped.
Anybody in the house?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are
still
here.
here.
Who was
Yeah.
after
Hey.
Honorable Sompa, to be followed by Honorable Van Wyk.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not gonna say much because Comrade Honorable Mkhaliphi have covered me. In terms of us as South Africans, we are not yet ready for this voting because we had many challenges. IEC was supposed to start there in terms of resolving the challenges that we had because majority or millions of voters could not vote in 2024 elections due to the fact that there were issues about their machines in terms of the network, in terms of the electricity. There were a lot of issues. And the other issue that we are on is that is in our hands now as South Africa. We are not up to that level of the US or other foreign countries in terms of technology, because even now our phones can be hacked. You can see that your in your bank account there are some transactions that were done online. People are stealing. You see, $10 is out without your knowledge and access. So now I'm really rejecting this issue of the e-voting. We are not ready as South Africa to do that because there are still some challenges that they have not resolved. Now they are introducing another problem on top of the problem that they have not yet resolved. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sompa. Honorable Van Wyk.
Goeiemorgen, leden van de COCTA Portfolio Committee. Good morning, IEC. Thank you very much. Leaders, from my side, I think the cybersecurity threat was brought under our attention as a security risk. And because the thing is, yes, with this cybersecurity risk that we are having, we also have presiding officers. That was also always a problem when it comes to elections. We cannot hide away from it that presiding officers was basically deployed by political parties within an IEC VD. So from my side, I think honestly, we must take this opportunity and also bring it under the IEC's attention that we must do away with your local residents that becomes IEC presiding officers in IEC VDs. We must rather start having a debate and rather say that let's employ your unemployed law graduate as presiding officers to go and preside over a VD in elections, because a law graduate would never take any bribery. A law graduate would not go with any corruption. Before we can even speak about e-voting, rural areas, yes, it was also covered. The other thing is, The IEC says here that they already have 6 months e-voting workshop program that they have worked on. Can they please make that 6 months workshop available to us and send it to us as well, so we can have a look at it, so we can know at what areas they will be at and in what wards they will be at. I also support the idea that as parties, we must be available, we must be able to invite the IEC to workshops of our own parties if needs be. Then the last thing is, I want to ask the IEC, isn't there any electronic plan that you can come up with where you can hold ward councillors accountable after elections to serve their wards? Because we have ward councillors who doesn't serve the wards, especially in rural areas, like in the Griftersveld municipality, in Ward 1, any Ward 2, that ward councillors is forever not in their wards. They don't serve their wards. The Ward 2 ward councillor is the speaker of the Grifters municipality, and she resides in Port Nolloth. Now, how do you keep your ward councillors accountable? Is there any way that you can come up with the electronic system to keep them accountable? From our side as the PA, we are still open to debate the e-voting, and we are still open in order to be persuaded with the e-voting. For now, please, can we consider the law graduate who is unemployed? I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Direko, for holding in. I've been changing different Wi-Fi spots here. I'm not quite sure what's the challenge. But nevertheless, thanks for taking the discussion forward. Honorable Van Wyk, I think you should bring the issue of the councillors who are not accountable to the committee. Let's discuss it there, so it doesn't have to be IEC dealing with that issue. Well, the chairperson and members and the commissioners, you have the questions that have been tabled, and the Chief Electoral Officer has made the presentation. There are the questions. Please deal with them, and then let's take it from there. There might be some that might be a bit sticky. I'm not sure how far we discuss the issue that relates to a matter that's already in court, but if you can find a way around it, deal with it, but that will understand. The rest of the other issues are information that the members would like to get from IEC. Let's proceed from there. Honorable Mr. Chairperson Muepia.
Chair, thank you very much. We have listened very carefully. Indeed, your members have been following the work that we are doing, and they have raised a number of questions that are interesting, and we must find the time to deal with them. Normally we would ask that the CEO and his team deal with the questions before them. We are not in a situation where I'd say this one, that one, the other. I will then ask Commissioner Love, once the CEO has dealt and his team with the questions, if there's any other clarity they would want to put in. And I will see. There are questions that may remain. If they remain, I will certainly deal with those questions. For now, let me invite the Chief Electoral Officer, and Kolobe, you're free to set the scheme as you often do. You can refer the questions to your team as may be appropriate. I hand over to you now.
Thank you.
Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and Chair of the Commission. I'm just going to deal with the broad things, and then Mr. Shibori will deal with the direct specific questions that were put, and then the CFO will deal with the financial question that was raised. But I think the starting point is the Electoral Commission Act, and in particular, Section 5I, which says part of the functions of the commission is to develop and promote the development of electoral expertise and technology in all spheres of government. So one therefore has to see the discussion, the national conversation that we are creating within the purview of that provision. But certain things tend to be restated. One, that the IEC has not made a decision, and the IEC can't make the decision to implement e-voting. But the IEC cannot shy away from the fact that there are pull factors that necessitate a national discussion. So we see this purely as a national discussion on which Parliament at an appropriate moment will express itself. That's number two. Number three, what the IEC has sought to do in the discussion document is to provide the country with an honest, balanced perspective on the matter. Because it's important that the national conversation is imbued with intellectual honesty, which is what the IEC has sought to do, to bring before the country and this portfolio committee where this thing has worked, where it has not worked, and the reasons why it has not worked, so that the insight from those examples can inform our national conversation to a point where we can express ourselves and say, no, we need this, or we don't need this. The IEC couldn't merely give you examples of where this was successful. That would be dishonest. The IEC has to give the portfolio committee and the country where it has worked and instances where it has not worked, which is what the presentation and the discussion document are doing. The third issue, I think, which bears some reflection, is the free and fair elections. The reality of the matter is that the South African Electoral Commission, it's a preeminent body, not only on the continent and in the world, actually. And independent studies confirm that. In fact, the latest study on the quality of elections that is done by professors at the University of East Anglia places South Africa as number 2 on the continent in terms of the quality of elections. And there's a way that was used in the discussion that we also compete quite favorably with other international jurisdictions. So South Africa's elections, technical elections, meet the international standard of free and fair. That, of course, does not mean South Africa's elections are free of challenges. Every election will be beset by some level of challenge. But when you apply international standards, you look at how the system functions in totality, and not just localized aberrations. You've got to analyze the entirety of the system. So we believe, at least as a commission, that the elections in the country have met the free and fair standard. The challenges that are in court, we will deal with them, and at an appropriate moment, we will come to Parliament, because we've got to present to Parliament a report on the 2024 elections, and we will take the country, therefore, into confidence once we are given an opportunity to present. The issue about cybersecurity is an omnipresent challenge, because people who perpetrate cyber attacks are active and introducing new ways of attacking systems every day. But when election time comes, the problem is compounded. So I think members are correct in saying whatever option is eventually adopted, if that's where the country wishes to go, it has to be informed in part by considerations of cybersecurity. Now, I did say in the presentation that there are two models. One is internet-based, which heightens the security question. And the other is voting station-based, where you could construct the system such that you are not online. You are decentralized. Every voting station operates its own without a live connection, so as to mitigate or reduce your risk surface in terms of cyber security. But yes, it is going to be an omnipresent challenge, which must be taken into account in arriving at a specific choice. The issue of presiding officers it's important, because a presiding officer plays a crucial role in the electoral process on the day of elections. We will have a discussion with the National Party Liaison Committee on the changes that must be made to the recruitment and selection criteria, and ensure that all political parties have an opportunity to view the people that are proposed as presiding officers, and where they feel uncomfortable to raise objection. Ample opportunity will be created for that. So, but a point must be made about presiding officers, and that is running a voting station also demands, and you need to have a level of supervisory experience to be able to deal with the challenges of the day. So there's a balance that must be struck in the criteria, which we will agree with parties, between the experience component and giving unemployed graduate opportunities. It is not either or. We need to find a judicious balance between those two critical imperatives. Having a voting station managed by an experienced person who has dealt with processes, who have dealt with people, who has dealt with irate people such as party agents may be, so that they are able to calm people down, they're able to make proper calls in terms of the regulations and the law, and so on, whilst at the same time give opportunities to unemployed graduates. So it's not an either or situation, it's getting a judicious balance between those two imperatives. And lastly, the public engagement, yes, once we've scheduled them, we can always share that with members of the committee. And with your leave, Chairperson of the committee, I'd like Mr. Shibori and the CFO to Mr. Shibori to deal with the substantive issues and the CFO to deal with the financial modeling question. Thank you.
Thanks, Sai. Good morning, members of the committee. At the outset, the report acknowledges that technology is not neutral. That technology exists and must be implemented within a context, and that context for us is the country South Africa. Secondly, is that we draw lessons from both jurisdictions that have successfully implemented E or I voting and those who were less successful. But in all material terms, we are guided by the contextual reality of South Africa, i.e., uneven penetration of ICT infrastructure, an uneven society of haves and have-nots, of the urban and the rural, the literate and the illiterate. So those things are foremost in the consideration, and they come through in the report. The second broad point is that while elections can contribute to the governance trajectory in the country, on their own, they can't resolve all matters related to the governance ills in the country. Now let's go to the questions. The first one was on who commissioned the study. The study was commissioned by the Commission, and the CEO explained its role, the nexus of the Commission's legal obligation, and why it deemed it fit to institute a study of this nature. And perhaps it is worth repeating that there are key objectives that underpin this study, and I repeat them. They are as follows. One is to increase inclusivity in elections. And for that reason, the report provides not a single technological solution, but varied technological solutions that respond to the different social milieus. A station-based technology, because that way you equalize opportunity for everyone. That way you can operate technology even without being connected to the internet. You can even do that without going online. And if you do that, you equalize opportunity, whether a person is in Rimfasmark or they are in the Sarabatman district municipality, they'll have the same electoral experience as a person in Hyde Park or in Bishop's Court. The second one is to drive efficiency in electoral administration for two principal reasons. One, to continue to safeguard electoral outcomes, but more importantly, to improve voters' experience at the level of a voting station or wherever they might experience the voting process. The third objective is to see if properly implemented, could electronic voting assist to drive down the cost of administering elections. And fourthly, to see whether properly administered, could electronic voting help in improving the turnout of certain demographics, i.e. young persons, because of their affinity with the use of technology. Is the IC amenable to interact with political parties? By all means, we've begun discussions in the PLC. We are also not averse when invited to make ourselves available to come present to political party caucuses or their leadership echelon. For now, the information is available on a website for download, but there is also a dedicated email address where we asking interested persons to make submissions so that we can receive those, record those, and include them in the final report. Why does the report give examples both in jurisdictions that have successfully implemented and those that have not been successful. I think we look particularly to those jurisdictions that have not been successful in order to learn the negative lessons. In other words, what is it that we should not do? In Germany, if you look at the German case study, it teaches you that technology must be subservient to the constitutional standard. In other words, the choice of technology that we derive in the country must meet the standard in the constitution that protects political rights, that also protects the freeness, fairness, and regularity of elections. From the DRC, the lessons to be learned is that proper onboarding and the management of the transition from paper-based ballots to an electronic voting mechanism is very key. Allied to that is how you take along the voting public. Issues of trust are going to be key. We recognize that in South Africa, you could have a good technological solution, but if you do not engender trust among the voting public, that technology is as good as not having been implemented. In Namibia, the lessons to be drawn there are that the ritual of making a mark on the ballot must always make sense, must always have a connection with the voter. In other words, the ritual of making a mark by a voter must have meaning. So a voter in Namibia would click on a machine, the machine would record their vote as being cast, but the voter would be none the wiser on whether their vote was recorded as cast. So the court there said, until you implement paper verifiable audit trail, the system falls short of the legal standard. The issue of the glitch the CEO dealt with, it is a matter that is before the Electoral Court. It is live litigation. And out of deference to that court, we ask, Chair, for your guidance that we do not transverse the merits of the matter, and that once the court has ventilated the issue, we will come back to the Portfolio Committee if there are residual matters to deal with. Linked to that is that the Commission will be presenting the election report to the National Assembly via the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs. And in that report, all the matters related to the performance of the Commission, the highlights, the areas of improvement for the previous past election will be detailed in that report, and they will become a public record once they are tabled in the National Assembly. There were issues around naturalized citizens. I do not want to traverse the details and the merits thereof, but just to indicate the legal consequence of naturalization. If a person is naturalized, they acquire the privileges and obligations of citizenship. In other words, they are able to vote because they are now a citizen. What I wish to deal with is the scheme of registering a voter and making sure that only eligible persons participate in elections. And that is as follows. The Commission is responsible for registering voters and compiling a voter's roll. At the point when we interact with a prospective voter, we ask for their identity document, we scan their ID number, and we submit that to Home Affairs, to the National Population Register, to ascertain whether that ID number is an ID number of a person who has the status of citizen. If the National Population Register confirms that the ID number is assigned to a person with citizenship, that ID number is included on the table, on the database of voters. If an ID number is not confirmed at the population register level, that person will not be on the voters roll. The short-term cost of e-voting, I'll leave that to the CEO Suffice just to make the following statement that one of the footpaths towards successful implementation of e-voting is to anticipate the cost correctly. The cost of outright procurement, the cost of storage, the cost of maintenance, and the cost of making ready that equipment for election. And as soon as we have narrowed the choices that are applicable for the country, only then can we say with a level of certainty what are the short, long, and long-term benefits of e-technology. I think I have dealt with all of the themes. The rest of the comments that have been made, we note those, and we will find a way to deal with them in the updated report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, DCO. If I can proceed, Chair, in terms of the costing and the financing, I think I want to... Sorry, Chair?
Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I want to leech on what the DCO actually indicated upfront to say, up until you defined what kind of gadget you buy, it's very premature to almost say at a costing level, what are we going to cost and how much we're going to cost. But what is key when you look at a major capital investment project is that it goes through a life of 3 stages. The first one is the short-term impact. The second one, which really lasts between 0 to 2 years. The second portion of that cycle is the medium term, where you look at the 2 to 5 years. And then when it really gets better, it's between 5 years and above, where you start really feeling the long-term impact of having gone through a major capital project. But maybe to slightly dissect it, let's go back to the year 0 to 2. There will always be that upfront cost because we do need to get into that initial payment of acquiring it. So from a capital side, we will feel the pressure there, and the huge cost will come from the initial acquisition. So you're not going to realize savings in the first 2 or 3 years as you start off. As you look at more or less the 2 years, there'll be that continued spending. We are going to invest in the voter education, system testing, addressing any technical issues that would have most probably come from the starting point of implementing such of a device of its nature. And then you're going to maybe start seeing those small savings kicking in. Then when you start going to 2 to 5 years of the lifespan of the project, you start seeing those operational gains in terms of labor reduction, automation, reducing the manual process in terms of the device. Also the ballot paper handling, the counting, the reporting savings, those you start realizing, especially around the logistic area. Then lastly, as I've indicated, where you get to the 5 years, that's when you really feel the impact of going into a major capital project, when you start realizing you're able to account for those benefits. So I think, Chair, let me stop there and hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Electoral Officer or the Chairperson.
Chair, I'd like to invite Commissioner Love if she has anything. Otherwise, I wrap up and we'll see if there are any follow-up questions. Commissioner Love, any gaps that you believe we have left?
Chair, I think that the questions have been answered by the team. I would just want to make one point, which is that very often the choice of technology can only be made in an informed way if that technology has an opportunity to be tested in the real environment. So, for example, the CEO has mentioned a possibility of engaging technology in a voting station whereby one doesn't actually need the benefit of real connectivity, where everybody can come to a voting station and everything that happens in the voting station is without the need to, use a lot of bandwidth and so on and so forth. Now, the point that I want to make here is that for people to have an understanding, firstly, of what that is, and secondly, of its practicality in areas, for example, where electricity is a problem and so on, it's important that those things are tested and that also the views of people in areas that are really facing so many of the infrastructural challenges, that one is able to get a sense from the communities in those areas as to what is their view and to what extent do they feel this becomes more or less trustworthy. And so that kind of testing in itself, even if it is done in parallel to our paper-based system that we use, is something that in and of itself would require the possibility of legal change. And that's the first point. The second point is that even if everybody were to be convinced at some point, and I really don't think that that is likely to be the case, that we do need some kind of electronic voting, the reality is that it is not something that can be done in any short space of time. And so for that reason, again, it's important to be thinking that technology itself is moving very rapidly. And so the conversations that we're introducing are also to get some kinds of frameworks within which we can look and consider new technologies, because as the CEO has mentioned, that is our obligation. And lastly, I mean, the idea of the Commission interacting with individual political parties and so on in order to ensure, on the one hand, that it's able to communicate what we have, where we've come to up to date. I think the advantage would also be that political parties can then highlight the kinds of concerns that they have in relation to the administration of elections, because as was said by both the CEO and the DCO, it is the administration of elections that we're dealing with, and many of the issues of accountability are things that are not directly relating to the administration of elections, but are relating to other political and legislative processes that are beyond the control of the IEC. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Love, and thank you, Chairperson of the session. I'd like to wrap up with a few observations, and I do think that there are one or two concerns that have generally been raised that we need to be more direct in dealing with. The first thing I want to address is that the fact that the conference we had this year in Cape Town is in fact a sequel of a similar conference we had in 2013, 2014 in Cape Town. That was the first conference following studies that were begun in 2009, 2010 in our country, long ago, to look at how our voting could be improved, what are the developments in the world, whether we desire to continue watching those developments and doing something about it, or whether we should ignore them. In 2014, once we had consulted in the manner that we are, there was a unanimous voice this nation gave to us, mandate. They said to us, we like what you're doing. You know, looking at the horizon and saying what is happening around the world on this subject. But we don't feel comfortable with what we don't know. Continue to find out, continue to study. For now, we stay where we are. We expect this nation to either say that or differently. We are not proposing anything. We are not imposing anything. We have not decided anything. And that is fundamentally important. The second issue I wish to raise is that, and I heard the CEO say this very importantly, I wanted to raise it. We are raising our observations in a non-partisan manner. We are not favoring the system we are not critiquing the system. We are saying this is what exists. This is what these systems can do. These are the challenges. These are the benefits. We have a set of specific challenges. The DCO Shiburi has just explained to you what we have learned from those. So the failures are not all common. They are very contextual. And we are studying those successes and failures in the context of our own country. Chair, the third thing I'd like to borrow from you, Chairperson of the committee. You use the word stage fright. Yes, there is stage fright, even amongst some of us. But we should be careful to guard against using it to help or advance a good cause. I accept that if we are not careful, there may be bad causes. But the point we are making is that these things are new. They will introduce complexity, although they are resolving a lot more complexity at the same time. And this is what we as the IEC hope to openly say, transparently say it, and be able to say, help us think it through, or let us think it through together. The fourth thing is that, and I think you, Chair, have also said this, the studies have not focused on advanced countries alone. In fact, there are many countries we have spoken about that are not advanced or more advanced than us. And for that, look at the report itself. It is certainly not correct to say that we are looking at advanced economies and advanced this. There are many countries that have used this or are using this where we are even more advanced than they are at the moment. What problem are we solving? We have clearly said, and the CEO opened with this, we are solving a problem of complexity in the electoral process and the consequences it is bringing to us, even as we develop and our democracy matures. That's really what we are looking at. Of course, there are other complexities that are arising because of what has happened elsewhere in the world. And that too, we will be open to learning from and taking lessons in terms of our very own context. There's a question about implications for citizenship and things. I think the DCO has dealt with this properly. I just want to also add that members may recall in 2009, very close to those elections, I think it was in May that year, the elections were on the 2nd of June. There was a constitutional court case that our apex court had, and that matter is known as the Rechter versus Minister of Home Affairs matter. Members would do well to just look at that. Our law at the time did not provide for South African citizens outside of the Republic, and we were ordered, and Parliament was ordered to go and revise legislation to provide for not only certain categories, but to allow for South African citizens. And it is not, as Parliament would know, we don't write the law, we implement the law. And that really is a thing. If Parliament is minded to look at that, we leave it to Parliament to do that. But once it is law, we are simply forced to implement the law as part of the work we are meant to do. There's a question that was raised about where did this study come from, who is behind this? And I think I have indicated that we ourselves, working with the political liaison committee, the PLC or the party liaison committee, then in 2009, agreed and began after those consultations to look at this. There was no dissension, if I recall, and this is where we are at, and we will continue to keep it that transparent and that open. There's a question about, you know, the presiding officers that they come from parties. I had the CEO address the question, but I think it is important I really make it plain. The Electoral Commission, working together with political liaison committees at national, provincial, and local level, have considered this issue over many years, and we have since resolved the issue of presiding officers. I'm not saying it's completely gone, but that there are persons planted in the process by parties. That loophole we have plugged. Because parties have the names of presiding officers at the local level for a period to object against them, and there's a clear criteria. At every electoral event, those names are submitted, and where objections are made and sustained, we summarily remove the people. Where people are not removed and we are told after the fact, the opportunity is gone. And I think, Chairperson, I say it out of great respect, I think it's not fair to say, IEC, you have allowed implants. We have a process. We want that process to work. We are keen. We don't want our processes, you know, affected by this activities that are undemocratic. And so we want to urge everyone to help us make the processes we have defined to work better. The last comment I want to make, there's a good Zulu saying, Chairperson, and I must borrow from you. Bathi indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. I hope I said it correctly. When we need to improve our processes, if we desire to do better, we must benchmark with those or against those that we believe are doing well. And this is a process that will give us improvements that are sustainable. It is what we seek to do. We have always set ourselves to do that, and we are grateful. We do that with political parties in this country, and now we will continue to do that with both political parties and candidates. None of these things do find a way to be implemented when we have not fully consulted. This is what this process is about, and we welcome the views. Some of the views are very, you know, in favor of, and others are not. Our role is to wait carefully, listen to these views, weigh them, and make informed decisions that we put before decision makers who will then find an appropriate way forward for all of us. I want to thank you, Chairperson. Unless there are other questions that are follow-ups or you are raising issues that we need to respond to, that is us for now. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Yes, your expression in isiZulu is correct. Thanks for the responses. You have tried to deal with the issues raised. I want to give the opportunity to the honorable members to deal with any follow-up questions or to look for clarity where things may not be clear, or if they feel there's a question that was omitted, this is the opportunity. Honorable Van Wyk.
Chairperson, I really have a problem here now. I just want to correct something to our chairperson of the IEC. Is that I've never said that the IEC is a fact that that political parties use presiding officers at IEC VD stations. Numerous, we have reported these matters almost at every elections and by-elections. So I've never said, it's not right to come and say that the IEC have implants, as if the IEC have planted the presiding officers there. But I also came with a resolution, a proposed resolution. And our colleague in the IEC who spoke before the other two speakers did indicate that national elections presiding liaison officers of political parties must have a debate around deploying unemployed law graduates as presiding officers, because no unemployed law graduate would be involved in any unlawful dealings or being corrupted, because they are fresh from the university and they will never take any cent to be corrupted. I came with the solution. I've never said the IEC has implants. Political parties have definitely implants when it comes to presiding officers, although we can't prove it. The last point, Chair, I really think that allow that the debate to be opened, and it mustn't be shut down from this platform. And yeah, I thank you, Chairperson. Just correct that one for me, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, I think let's leave the issue as a matter of clarification. I think your concern relates to people who might be serving party interests whilst working for the IEC. And I think that point is what we need to focus on. I thought that there was an effort to try and clarify it. Maybe if there's any misunderstanding, we could part with the understanding that that is really not what you meant. And I think from the IEC point of view, that's not what they are making an accusation about. They are basically all trying to address the question of people who, whilst under the IEC, might be wanting to further the interests of a particular party. And I think all of us agree, we don't want to see that happening. And the IEC is saying they're trying to clean that up with the approach that they're taking. And from your point of view, the suggestion of the law graduates is an additional suggestion, but I think the core issue is about non-partisanship on the officials who preside, especially the presiding officers. Let's deal with it from that angle. And I think if we remove the misunderstanding, then I think we're back to the main point, which we will certainly all agree about: non-partisanship on the part of the presiding officers. Honorable Mkhaliphi and then Honorable Mtetwa, please come on your follow-ups.
Thanks, Chair. I was listening when the IEC was responding. I'm sure they are very careful not to get into specifics. So it means that Chair, as well as the committee, will still going to invite IEC to come with specifics. For instance, when the CEO was telling us about the different devices that are used in different countries, you might find that we don't know what are those devices. what are the difference from those devices. So we still need to get into details about this proposal of e-voting in that regard. Because as I was saying, Chair, if they can tell us after those countries from that page 46 to page 50 are saying that we have tested this new model of voting, of e-voting, but it didn't work. So I was asking specifically, okay, once we have this country saying that the model that you want to introduce has failed in other countries, so therefore, can you tell us what you want to achieve? Leave alone the issue of the ballot. We agree on the ballot, but also elections is not only have challenges on ballot, it's because all other challenges as the one that Honorable Van Beek was trying to expose in terms of presiding officers. So this is a long way to go, because most of the challenges as a result of those countries said, no, we're not going ahead with this model is because of the devices. And on my opening remarks, Chair, I asked them, while we are still having a VMD, it's also have been proven that the VMD is a problem. It's got challenges. Two, we have a problem in the country of the electricity of load shedding. How is the IEC planning around that? They didn't come clear. I think one commissioner said there are problems that are beyond IEC, but I think when you are planning, we are planning and using all the factors and take those factors into consideration to say, as a country, we have this challenge, as he said, that in the context of a country. So I didn't hear them clear to say, how are they planning around the issue of electricity and load shedding? The third one, Chair, when we attended that workshop or seminar, or I don't know how to term it, other countries were saying it does not mean that if you are introducing this e-voting, you are going to use your smartphone or you're going to use your device. You still, in other voting stations, you still have to go to a voting station to cast your vote. Honorable Teta will remember this when we had lunch with myself, with him and Chair, to say, it's also not clear if they are proposing that it's going to be an e-voting or is a mix of voting and going to the station. So we still have a long way. Thirdly, Commissioner Janet Love tried to answer me about inviting IEC to come to do the presentation to political parties, but she was not clear if, yes, we can invite them or we can't invite them. So we can know after this meeting what is the way forward in terms of taking this engagement forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mteto.
Thanks, Chair. I just drafted something here, which is a structure of issues that I would like IEC to take into consideration. Why? Because the elections as a process or as an activity done in a country, it has legal implications, political implications, and population implications. Then I drop down certain points which are relating to these three topics that I'm raising, which affect the elections. One, when political parties are contesting elections, is because they want voter currency or they want a voter share in terms of supporting their cause and manifestos. But for that process to be done, they need to be reduced into voting, whether people are willing to vote for those matters. And then in this case, you then have population issues where in South Africa we have diverse race groups who are advancing their own narrow racial causes. In this case of South Africa, you have issues like our white minority wanting to advance Cape independence, and where they will use elections as a way to check whether people they want Western Cape to be independent from South Africa. That's one issue, the race issue. And then you have issues that are raised politically, which are advanced by political parties, wherein issues of previously disadvantaged laws, issue of equality, issues of participation in the economy. And then you have legalities where the judiciary will issue judgment on the political issues which are affecting racial groups, which are reduced in a voting process, wherein we are now sitting with judgments coming from the courts advanced by political parties to reverse previously disadvantaged policies and laws that were seeking to address certain racial issues. We have parties that are saying, let's go back because these policies are not working, which then boils down to the issue of voting. Can we vote for these matters? Then you find the laws or the legal segment voting in favor of certain racial groups to grant them actually a right to reverse gains that were addressing certain racial groups who happen to be majority against minority. So we are sitting with an egg on a face wherein now we are seeing a new culture of reversing to racial lines, wherein we are seeing emergence of Kleinfontein, Orania, Cape Independence, which means these groups of races are going to be starting to vote according to their own groups. And yet we were promoting a rainbow nation 30 years ago. That rainbow nation is no more here. We are sitting also with an international community that interferes on racial groups in South Africa, wherein they allow them, they support them. I saw a delegation going to Belgium seeking support to develop Orania. I saw a delegation going to US seeking a support from US to advance certain issues in our country. Yet elections are a domestic issue, but international community interfering. That is very wrong. I want you to take all of these things as IEC. See if it's there anything that you can do for us, because I also know for a fact that from 1988, there is a book written, South Africa Incorporated, Oppenheimer Empire, which means this country has been registered as a company under a certain group of individuals who control South Africa's economy, which is also very wrong because that affects the elections. How do you have a fair election when the economy of the country and the government is under the spell of an individual? And it's not just 1988, in 1966, and in 1940, and in 1917. These are the issues I'm raising.
Honorable Mteto, I think the last part of your issues you are raising aren't quite about electronic voting. A lot of them are more political issues and political questions that can be debated from a different perspective. I don't think the IEC has got any way or a mandate to deal with those. So let's just concentrate on the areas that relate to this issue of voting, electronic voting system, and see whether we can clarify on those issues, and then we can take it from there. Any other member that would like to raise any other question that was left unanswered? Okay, let's go back to the chairperson. Would you like to attempt to deal with those questions now? And I'd like you to, some of these that I've raised, that have been raised, that are more broader political issues for debate, you could just leave those out. Let's focus on your presentation. Thank you.
Chair,
Please.
Chair, thank you very much. I want to thank you and the members once again. On the first issue of Honorable Van Wyk, I accept and I take the point that he was raising of correction. I think it was a misunderstanding. You have cleared that issue, and I'm quite happy with how you have cleared that. Certainly, there is no desire on our part to antagonize or anything. The only desire is to clarify, and I think you've done well, Chair, on that score. Thank you very much. On the questions raised by Honorable Mkhaliphi, she says that we were careful to avoid specifics, and this means we have a long way to go. You are correct, Mem Kalipi. That's exactly what we are saying. We are saying we are inviting inputs. We have not made a decision. There is no decision on the table. We are inviting inputs. And it is correct There is no device that is on the table that is being, we are simply using these things to demonstrate what has worked and what has not worked. We need to deal with the problems we can use technology to resolve for us. So we are not eyeing a specific this or the other thing. We are talking the process. That's why we have been clear, except that today we haven't, and I want to take the opportunity to be even more clearer. There are people who have said, you are raising these things because you want to go and implement something in local government elections. Far from it. Local government elections are going to happen in the manner we all know. We can't at this point be looking at alternatives and then going to, they have to be tested, as the CEO has said. There must be pilot projects. We've got to run these things and see how they are socialized into our own environment. And only once we have found a way to say we are comfortable will we do it. And so I think that point must be made, and we mustn't be shy from where I sit to say it. The VMD did present us with challenges, but those were challenges that we have considered, and we will deal with the matter when we deal with our election report. Safe to say that we are using them at the moment, and they have not been an issue because we have dealt with those challenges. So I'm saying we are serious. We are also frank. When we have problems, we don't seek to hide them. We say them and we deal with them. And this is one such problem. Load shedding and electricity, these are challenges that must be taken into consideration if and when we make the choices that we make. And so all of these things are really in the basket of things that we need to deal with as we listen to comments, as we get input, and these are very important. I note what you have said, Chair, about the issues raised by Honorable Mtetwa. I do want to say that our efforts are strictly those that are in the mandate of the Electoral Commission. We are very careful not to overstep that mandate. We are very careful not to fulfill it. And so we take note of the issues he raises. We deal, unfortunately, with those that are within our purview and our mandate to deal with for now. I think that's where I pause, Chairperson, and want to thank you. Commissioner Love, I think we close it at that, unless you, I see you are on the yeah.
Chair, there was just one very direct question by the Honourable Member Nkalepi asking whether or not I confirm that the political parties can invite the IEC to go through these issues. I confirm what the CEO said unambiguously, that can and happen at any time. Thanks, Chair.
Chairperson, we are in your hands, and I think we must thank you for the fierce debate, the interesting issues that have been raised. We are all ears, and we take this matter seriously. From where we are, these are not things you can hide. You've got to deal with them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Honorable members, I take it there are no other questions, and but clearly there are issues for further discussion that we have on the table. Let me take the opportunity to thank the chairperson, Mr. Muepia, and the Commissioner Love for the responses. Thank the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Mamabulo, and the management of the Electoral Commission for the presentation and the responses. I think I still want to say that this was a very good opportunity to share views, clearly not enough, but nevertheless very, very important. I have referred to a kind of stage fright, and let me start by saying that from where I sit, somewhere in the future, there will be a lot more electronic voting involved in South Africa than what we have now. Between now and that time, there's a lot of space that needs to be dealt with. There are gaps that need to be addressed. I think coming back to the issue, as we welcome the presentation, I think it is correct that the IEC should be looking ahead and exploring all of these ideas. Certainly, there cannot be a shift in policy unless it is informed by a decision, a discussion that takes into account the available technology, the current challenges that we're facing, and also the various issues that are associated with it. So coming back to the comments by the members, I think taking this discussion forward is going to be very important, and I want to welcome the offer of the IEC that the parties should be allowed to invite the IEC to table this matter and brief them on this matter and discuss it. I think that's the way to go. From where I sit, the starting point for the IEC is to actually convince the clients about this matter first as to what it is all about, because this issue of electronic voting system will only begin to operate only when the members of the various parties and the public in general accept that this is a way to go. And so I think there are a number of things that do need to be given attention to. Firstly, we have raised the question of clearly defining what is it we're trying to resolve. And anywhere you go, this question is going to arise. What are we solving? What is broken? What are we fixing? And I think that part does need to be clarified as you move on. Secondly, the issue that will be important is once you know that, you are able then to guide in terms of what aspects of the technology is needed, which element thereof, and which particular types of gadget might suffice to resolve the problem South Africa is trying to resolve. Different countries have got different systems, but they're all electronic systems, and they've been fashioned on the basis of how each of those countries believe that their challenges would need to be addressed. If you look at India, it's very different to what you're doing in Namibia or in DRC or in Germany. That is one issue I think that becomes very important, that at this point, there's no decision. There's a whole menu of things that can be done, and they will only be guided by a properly researched report that indicates the areas that we either have problems or that are recommended for attention. That's where the only way we'll be able to determine what kind of gadgets or equipment or system that we will require. The next item linked to that has to be about the meaning. I think we put it different ways. The first issue raised by Honorable Mteto was, does the electronic voting system have a meaning to the voters? And that is what I think the other members have kind of echoed. But if you look into the constitutional court rulings on the different countries, it relates to the fact that there has to be an alignment of the system with the constitution of that country, particularly that the voting has to have a meaning to those who voted, and there must be a way of verifying that they actually did make a mark and that it can be audited and all of that. Now, this all comes from this research, and I think it's an important consideration as we move forward to keep in mind. Having said so, there are also various logistical issues of concern that members have expressed. In particular, the current voting system has had its own glitches, and therefore the question we need to be able to convince everyone is that those are resolved adequately to be able to move to the next step of going more electronic when we've got challenges on the manual system, and therefore we need to then be sure that we can, use the migration into electronic to improve the efficiency on what we saw as being challenges at the level of the manual system. Then, of course, it's linked to some other specific logistical issues, power shutdowns, what we call, the electricity, what we call load shedding problems, and lack of availability of electricity in some of the areas. The issue of connectivity, the fact that the gadgets are themselves not necessarily able to connect at different parts of the country, and the penetration by the ICT systems, how many of the GOGOs would really want to take a chance on an electronic voting gadget when all they do on their phone is just to answer and maybe send messages. So those issues have to be taken into account as issues that need to be addressed as part of how you can move forward in relation to the electronic voting system. So with all of that, it then becomes also important that all of this information has to get back to one issue of trust. Do the people have confidence in the system? Do people trust that the system is going to be without challenges? The issue of cybersecurity comes in, the questions of manipulation, and already the question of conflating some of the glitches on the previous election with what may happen in the future. We need to be able to say those issues do need to be addressed so that we can reduce any degree of skepticism around such a matter. So these are some of the areas that I believe are important to deal with from the point of view of the IEC as part of this conversation. From where I sit, I do understand that there are many questions that are difficult to be specific about simply because a lot of work still has to be done to clarify which way we should be going and whether it is correct to go that way or not. And the public would not know differently unless it is clear these are the problems we're trying to resolve, these are the options that we're offering, and so on. But those kinds of discussions can only happen if we allow the IEC to say, okay, here are the questions, come back with the answers, and then we can come back with more answers. And we must accept that it's going to take us a while to get everyone to understand where we're going. At some point, and I said this in the conference, that it may just not be easy to convince people that by the say-so of the IEC, we're now ready for the electronic voting system. You might actually need to do a number of pilots where people can see this thing works, and in fact, you can compare the manual versus the electronic, so that the errors associated are insignificant, and therefore people can begin to say, no, it does work, and it will help in our situation, as it were. We don't have the exact challenge as what they might have had in the DRC, where the numbers of people on the ballots, the number of candidates on the ballot, the number of people, the population size, the inaccessible, parts of the country, and all of that, and the fact that not necessarily the entire population, voter population, participates or gets access to the voting processes, and all of those, there might be different challenges as we see in different countries, and of course, we may not necessarily also be ready to join what they were saying about India, that you can, in fact, in India, you can even get votes counted as the voting is continuing, and all of that. So there's a degree of complexity that would be associated with this migration at a certain point. But I think where we are, we're at a point where we just need to know, can this work? What are we solving? Can it solve it? Can we trust it? Can we trust the system? Can we trust the people? Can we trust the process? All of these issues are issues. These are matters that need to be addressed. And I would say, if we can take those issues and move forward, it will allow the conversation to take one step forward, and that at the point of people just getting informed. We can only get a policy decision, a legislative amendment, only when everyone is clear about the problems we're solving, the nature of the proposed solution, and why that is suitable for South Africa. And then, of course, ultimately the decision will have to come to Parliament for that discussion. I think it's still early, but it's important that the conversation should continue. Of course, there will be disagreements, there are going to be robust engagement and all of that, but I think at the end of the day, the conversation is well-founded. We should let that continue. But at this point, we as the members here have indicated there are a number of areas that need further clarification. And I hope that the parties will take up the offer of the IEC to go into party meetings to get them convinced. And I think the IEC must welcome that opportunity of being invited, because the most vocal supporters or detractors on this matter will be political party leadership, and those need to be the ones who will be convinced on the basis of adequate information that will be made available to all the parties. With that, I want to say that it has really certainly been a very interesting discussion, and it does also remove the sense of uncertainty that we won't wake up tomorrow when we're faced with gadgets to start voting on. It certainly won't be happening for next year's elections, but certainly there might be certain parts that we might actually introduce on a incremental basis. There might be certain approaches that we might also use on a pilot or an incremental basis, until everybody can understand that there are certain things we can take for granted that these are fine, and therefore can move on. How long that will take is obviously going to be the function of the path that we have to follow. But I do agree we need to also keep looking at those who have already done something. What is it they're doing that we like, and what is it we do not like? As you said in Jalibuzo Baba Pambili, I agree with that. So that for me is how I would say this conversation has been useful, and therefore we must then say thank you to the members of the IEC, the commissioners, the chief electoral officer, and all the other members of management. At this point, we would like to excuse you out of the meeting, and we will have a few minutes for the members to look at the program as we move forward. Thank you very much. Chairperson?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Honorable members, we have one matter that we haven't resolved, but we want to leave for the committee to look at. The Electoral Commission, the Auditor General, has been in touch with us, and they have raised the question of the committee briefing. Now, I sent a message to the members and said we have a bit of a challenge trying to adjust to align ourselves with the Auditor General's office. The Auditor General's office has made two requests. The first request is that they would like to brief the committee, and they are trying to look at the best possible time. And secondly, that they would love to release the report as soon as possible. And so they wanted to see whether it's possible, like they did last year, to use our meeting to let that be the public release of the document, which in the past we had welcomed, and this time we still welcome. And therefore, they had a number of options, three options. One option was that we can have the briefing on the Wednesday after the cabinet, and I was a little unsure about this, so I didn't raise it when we were talking to the committee, because I was just concerned about the fact that there was a sitting that's going on at that time, and whether in fact we could do stage parallel programs of that nature while the session is going on the one side, and that we could be having the AG's office on the one side. So that was one issue. The other option was whether we could request parties to allow us to use the Thursday morning, which is a party caucus day, and most of the members were amenable to that, although one member was raising that as an objection about the parties. But when we approached, we were aware that this is a party caucus day. But nevertheless, the principle we're trying to protect was that the committee gets briefed before the matter is made public. The other option was a meeting after after the AG has released the report to the public, which means that we could have our meeting at some point, anytime from Friday going onwards, but already the report would have been out into the public. Now, I felt that would be a little unfair and probably not advisable to get the committee to read the report in the media and only come back to be briefed afterwards, when they would have been expected to react already to that report. So those were the three things that we're looking at. Now, I just want to check, because we needed to also look at whether the Wednesday is still a possibility. We don't have an approval from the House chairperson on this one. We don't yet have the other approval for the Thursday. We just want the members to be aware what we're trying to resolve from the point of view of getting the Auditor General to brief us as committee ahead of a public launch or at the time of the public launch. So that's the information I wanted to share with the members, and we will probably be able to deal with this issue effectively once we can get a response as to what is possible on those days. So that's really what I wanted to table here. The rest of the program does not have much new that I would like to raise, but I just want the members to be informed. At this point, if members wish to comment, otherwise this was more information, we'll only be able to give you something concrete at the time, but we thought it's important for you to be aware as we're trying to manage the issue. Thank you very much. If anybody wishes to comment, you are welcome. Otherwise, the rest of the program, we haven't changed anything. The other point that I think we have discussed with the members, obviously, has been about the fact that there will be instances where we would like the meetings to be in person. This one, certainly on the Auditor General's briefing, will be in person, but we will need to share ideas, especially if we're going to be having some municipalities that we want to sit with and talk to. It works better if it's all in person. Of course, the oversight visits are always in person. So we would need to share. If members believe that we need a meeting in person, you are welcome to make suggestions, and let's look at it from that point of view. Otherwise, with regards to the situation in Parliament, most of the meetings are going to be in hybrid, and so most of us won't necessarily be expected to be in Cape Town in the House at that time, and we'll just play it by the ear. So that is where we are. Honorable Mkhaliphi?
Now, Chair, I think that we'll get a guide from you, because both days, which is Wednesday and Thursday, we need to get a permission from the House Chair, and the members will be allowed to go and have a meeting outside. It's either our parliamentary meeting, which will be on Wednesday, or Thursday, which is our caucus day. So I think we'll be waiting for the guide, and I agree with you, Chair, that no, the AG must come and brief us in a committee before it go to publics. I think it's also going to dignify our committee as it did before. So the second issue, Chair, that you are not saying anything about it, and I know it's because of the budget, is the issue of the study tour. I think we need also to be updated and be frank, and then we also have to have some suggestion. Because my understanding is that the Denmark agreed to host us in June, but it seems as if because our problems as a country is not going to happen. So therefore, we need to take a decision in that regard. Chair, I propose. Thanks.
I didn't want to steal your thunder. I know you wouldn't want to end the meeting without raising the issue of Denmark. So you have now.
Chair.
Yeah, I don't want to go into any more about it. I know that we couldn't have, it would be a dull meeting if we didn't give you that space. So, yes, indeed, the question of the budget, the chairperson had said they would present the budget and then they will allow us the space to take the matter forward based on that. Now that there's been a change in the program, it does affect us. We will probably not be able to ask for a change of dates and excuse me, until we've got a sense as to when we can propose an alternative. Otherwise, we will be on a to and fro that has got no conclusion. So Shirin will still be managing that issue, but certainly it's not off the agenda yet. Yes, there may well be a need to change the timelines. The timelines are also linked to the host that will be, because we chose on the basis of that. So I would leave it at that for now, but we will certainly make sure that there's an update shared if there's some new developments on that matter. Honorable Deputy Minister, you are on the floor.
No, thanks very much, Chair and honorable members. I just wanted to check, Chairperson, whether in the interest of observing the protocols of the doctrine, separation of powers, at the risk of being privy to information exclusively meant for members of the committee, will it be acceptable if I leave the meeting at this stage?
Yes, certainly. The Deputy Minister and Deputy Ministers, you are welcome to leave. Thank you for being with us. And the department, the DG, and all the other members of management are also free to leave us at this point. And you will really be excused, and we will not feel slighted in any way by your early departure, but certainly we want to say thank you for having been with us throughout this time. At this point, the committee is dealing with internal, administrative, mundane, domestic kitchen affairs, so you shouldn't really be burdened with those details. So thank you very much for being here, and you are excused together with your other colleague, the Deputy Minister, and the Minister. If he was here, he would be excused, and certainly DGs will be excused, and the senior management will be excused. But honorable members, let's continue there. Are we fine with this at this point?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. But Honorable Mkhalip has not yet told me that she's leaving.
Honorable Mkhalip.
I'll leave with you, Deputy Minister. Don't worry.
We'll leave that for offline conversation. Then we don't have to be
Thank you.
recording anything on our minutes details. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Tao, thank you. You're also excused. And certainly the DGs are also excused. Thank you very much. So, members, that's where we are. This was just information, and certainly we will update you as time goes. And at this point, may I then bring this meeting to a closure, and thank you for all attending. I assume you are still all here, although I didn't see all the faces when we started, but I assume that we all have had a good day. At this point, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Salute.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. Thank you.